this story of the three wise men arriving in Judea, searching for the newborn king of the Jews, I think it's by far one of the more interesting stories of all of the Bible. But even more interesting, but it's one of the more interesting parts of the nativity event itself. There's such a whole mixture, everyone, of so many layers going on in our gospel this evening. Not least is the clash between the King of Heaven and the kings and kingdoms of this world, which Herod very much represents. And the games that Herod is playing in our gospel night are quite extraordinary when you look at them. This domination that's in his character, political maneuvering and deception. Especially, if you notice there, he starts to hide behind false piety. Really devious guy. He hides behind false piety, trying to trick the wise men and to tell them that when you find the baby, come back to me and I'll offer him homage. But of course, he wants to kill the child because he's terrified of this newborn king of Bethlehem. It's dark stuff. It's anything but childish. And it's great stuff for a thriller of a movie, you ask me. It's so intense in many respects. And anyone who says the Bible is boring, they haven't a clue what they're talking about. Never read it in my book. And all the while, the three wise men, they're very indifferent to Herod's kind of political maneuvering, his egotistical, fear-ridden grip on power, because all they're there to do is to find this child that was prophesied to be born in following the star. And of course, then they follow the star to Judea and subsequently to Bethlehem. And when they find Jesus, what they offer him? Gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And folks, the idea of those gifts is that gold is obviously a gift fit for a king. Frankincense is what the high priest uses to burn the sacrifice in the temple. And of course, myrrh is used to embalm a dead body. Weird gifts for a newborn baby. But you see, folks, they are recognizing who's in the manger that they're looking at. They're pointing to who Jesus is. First of all, he's the King of Heaven. Secondly, he's the high priest who offers the ultimate sacrifice. And two, God who's become man is now mortal in our world. Really extraordinary type of stuff. That's why, it's always interesting, folks, to know that there's a great focus on the gifts that the three wise men bring. And as important as they are, we should never forget why they bring them in the first place. To pay homage to Jesus? Yes, of course. But because, like I said, they recognize who this newborn child in Bethlehem is. And that this child is different. Things are going to change because of this birth that has been prophesied for so long. And we know, folks, that with Jesus comes an even mightier gift than all the frankincense, myrrh, and gold in the world. What Jesus, as we know, brings with him is victory over evil. A king. Jesus is a king at the end of the day, everyone, who leads us all through the breach in the defenses of evil in this world. The high priest who offers the total and only sacrifice that matters. That God who's become man dies on the cross out of love, which of course is the ultimate sacrifice for anyone and their friends. And that's why, so many homilies tonight and tomorrow, they're going to focus on what gifts do we bring to Jesus, which is a very good, important question. But we should never forget what he brings to us, which is far more important. And folks, the only thing you and I can offer Jesus is our hearts, our lives. That's all we can offer Jesus. It's everything. Why? Why would we do something like that? Is it to feel fuzzy inside and to be a nicer person? No. It's so that he can gift us the victory over evil, the victory over suffering. That the tears that you and I shed every now and again in our journey through life, the sadness of seeing a loved one pass away, the fear of a bad medical diagnosis, or the anxiety of a family in division and strife, or the heartbreak when a child has to leave the country and to go foreign to find work. All of that darkness, folks, that sadness that we experience in our lives, it doesn't have the final say in our lives. That fear is transformed into hope, and sadness into joy, loss into gain, emptiness into fulfillment, and of course death into life. Those are the characteristics, the gifts that Jesus brings with him from his own kingdom. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff. But, as we all know, we offer our hearts to Jesus the same way the three wise men approached the Lord. In humility. They bow, they kneel before the King. that these mighty men in the eyes of this world, who are the apex in many respects of societal status, they are approaching the Lord with humility, knowing that this child is above them. And that's why, everybody, when we're in the presence of Jesus in our churches, we should become more humble. Because he is Lord. He is God Almighty in human flesh. His love saves us. His mercy heals. His touch frees us. And his spirit creates anew. And that's why, Herod, on the other hand, everybody, he's a man of intense ego and anger. There's anger in his words. It's underneath the subtle pages there in the gospel. A man of pungent fear and paranoia. All because he has made himself a god in his own head. And when we start doing that, we're in deep, deep trouble. And you notice, everybody, how he responds to fear. It's the same way every dictator, every tyrant throughout history has approached or responded to fear, with violence and chaos. He wants to get rid of the child because he's afraid of him. And whenever I think of Herod, I always think of Stalin. It's pure and simple. Just whenever I think of Stalin, I think of Herod. Both of them, the very same characteristics in the gospel. And folks, Herod does this. He's like this because he himself is a puppet from an even bigger megalomaniac in imperial Rome, the Caesar. And that's why, anyone who starts to place in their own heads that they're their own God, that, my truth trumps everybody else's truth, my feelings overdo what anyone else is thinking or feeling, that's a narcissism of false truth of the self. Because when we start to go on that route, we become a puppet from the God of the self, the God of the ego, which of course is Satan himself. So folks, my message on this beautiful feast day, as we close the celebration of Christmas, is a message of humility, essentially. The three wise men, they should always remind us of humility. That's why they're always presented in little nativity scenes and pictures as bowing or kneeling to the infant Jesus. We should be like them, folks, no matter what our status is on this earth or ecclesiastical importance, to kneel, to bow before the newborn King of Bethlehem. And now we begin to see why they're called the wise men.